Women here are just playing dress-up in a man's world. Time to show them where they really belong.
The words sliced through the morning air at 8:47 a.m. sharp, recorded in perfect digital clarity as David Brooks set his phone down on the polished conference table. Across the training floor of Riverside Community Wellness Center, Rachel Stone looked directly into the security camera lens, her voice steady as steel. The countdown had begun. 47 minutes. What David didn't know was that Rachel had been recording everything since the moment she walked through those glass doors. What he couldn't have anticipated was that his new self-defense instructor wasn't just another woman he could systematically push out of his carefully orchestrated boys' club. Rachel Stone was a former national martial arts champion with nerves of titanium and equipment that would make intelligence officers jealous. The professional-grade audio device in her jacket pocket captured every syllable with crystal clarity, automatically syncing to cloud backup servers that David would never be able to touch, let alone delete. The timestamp read 8:47 and 12 seconds when Jake Morrison, the senior fitness trainer who'd been following David's unspoken directives for 3 years, approached Rachel with that particular swagger that screamed trouble. "So you're the new girl," Jake said, his voice carrying just enough volume for the morning crowd to hear. "Hope you can handle more than just theory." Rachel's response was measured, professional. "I'm here to teach practical self-defense. That means real situations, real techniques." "Real situations?" Jake's laugh was harsh. "Lady, this isn't some dojo where you bow and play pretend. This is about actual strength." The audio recorder caught the slight emphasis on actual, the way Jake's eyes flicked toward David's office window, seeking approval. What the device also captured, though Jake couldn't have known, was the subtle shift in Rachel's stance. 3 years of championship competition had taught her to read aggression in muscle tension and breathing patterns. Jake was performing, not attacking. David emerged from his office at precisely the right moment, his expression a masterpiece of concerned authority. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem at all," Rachel said before Jake could respond. "Just discussing training protocols." The way David's jaw tightened for exactly 1 second told Rachel everything she needed to know. He'd expected Jake to rattle her, to create enough of a scene that David could step in as the reasonable mediator. Instead, Rachel had controlled the narrative from the first word. "Excellent," David said, his smile returning full force. "Rachel, why don't you show everyone what you can do? We've got about 20 members here for the morning session. Perfect audience for a demonstration." The request sounded supportive, even encouraging. But Rachel noticed how David positioned himself near the sound system controls, how his fingers drummed against his leg in a specific pattern, how Jake suddenly seemed to know exactly where to stand for optimal viewing angles. This wasn't spontaneous. This was choreography. "I'd be happy to," Rachel replied, then did something David hadn't expected. She pulled out her phone and set it on the equipment rack, angling the screen to catch the timestamp display on the wall clock. 8:48 a.m. "For documentation purposes, I always record my first demonstration at a new facility." David's eye twitched, barely perceptible, but Rachel caught it. "Smart thinking," he said, his voice maintaining its supportive tone. "Insurance likes documentation." 23 members had gathered in the main training area, a mix of ages and fitness levels that represented Riverside's typical morning crowd. Rachel recognized the demographic immediately. Professionals getting their workout before heading to office jobs, retirees maintaining their health routines, a few college students home for winter break, normal people living normal lives, unaware they were about to witness the opening moves of a carefully planned campaign. Jake stepped forward, cracking his knuckles with theatrical precision. So what's first, Coach? The title was delivered with just enough sarcasm to land as disrespectful without crossing into obvious harassment. Textbook intimidation tactics, probably refined through multiple iterations with previous female instructors. Rachel wondered how many women had stood in this exact position, feeling the weight of 20 pairs of eyes and knowing their credibility hung in the balance. Basic escape techniques, Rachel said. Let's start with wrist grabs. What happened next would be replayed on security footage dozens of times over the following weeks. Jake reached for Rachel's wrist with casual confidence, the kind of grip designed to demonstrate superior strength rather than simulate a realistic attack scenario. Rachel allowed the contact for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for everyone to see Jake's fingers close around her wrist, long enough for the audio recorder to capture his slight grunt of effort as he applied pressure. Then Rachel moved. The technique was textbook perfect, a precise rotation that turned Jake's grip strength against itself, followed by a controlled counter that left him stumbling backward while Rachel remained centered and balanced. No unnecessary force, no dramatic throws, just efficient biomechanics applied with championship-level precision. Jake recovered quickly, his face flushing with embarrassment and anger. Lucky break. Let's try something more realistic. That was realistic, Rachel replied calmly. Most attacks involve grabbing first, striking second. Break the grab, control the distance. Not how it works in the real world, sweetheart. The endearment landed like acid, and Rachel saw several members of the audience shift uncomfortably. David, she noted, remained perfectly still near the sound controls, his expression neutral, not intervening, not correcting Jake's increasingly inappropriate tone, just watching. Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate proper technique? Rachel offered. Jake's grin turned predatory. Absolutely. This time his approach was different, faster, more aggressive, designed to catch Rachel off guard and reassert his dominance in front of the crowd. The audio recorder captured the sharp intake of breath from the audience as Jake lunged forward with significantly more force than any reasonable training scenario would require. Rachel sidestepped with minimal effort, redirecting Jake's momentum into empty air while maintaining perfect balance. As he stumbled past her, she spoke to the audience without taking her eyes off him. Notice the overcommitment. Aggression without control creates vulnerability. Jake spun around, his face now openly hostile. Stop dancing around and actually engage. This is engagement, Rachel replied. Real self-defense isn't about meeting force with force. It's about intelligence, timing, and using an attacker's aggression against them. From across the room, David finally spoke up. Maybe we should let Jake show his approach too. Different perspectives can be valuable. The suggestion sounded reasonable, even educational. But Rachel caught the subtle nod David gave Jake, the way his fingers tapped 3 times against his leg. Signal patterns, she realized. They'd done this before. Absolutely, Rachel agreed. Please show me your technique. What Jake demonstrated over the next 5 minutes wasn't technique at all. It was intimidation theater. Each demonstration involved more contact than necessary, more pressure, more invasion of personal space. The audience grew increasingly uncomfortable, several members exchanging worried glances as Jake's behavior escalated from unprofessional to borderline aggressive. Through it all, David maintained his position of supportive neutrality, occasionally offering commentary that sounded educational, but never directly addressing Jake's obvious boundary violations. And through it all, Rachel's audio recorder captured every word, every sound, every telling moment of administrative silence. Thanks for watching, and if this story hits close to home, smash that like button and subscribe for more workplace justice stories. Hit that thanks button too. It really helps support content like this that exposes systematic harassment. Now tell me, where are you watching this from? What's the workplace culture like in your country? Because what Rachel was experiencing wasn't just harassment. It was a coordinated campaign designed to push women out of positions they'd rightfully earned. At 8:53 a.m., Tom Bradley appeared. Head of security for Riverside Community Wellness Center, Tom carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. His timing, Rachel noticed, was impeccable, arriving just as Jake's behavior was reaching its most problematic point. "Everything okay here?" Tom asked, his voice carrying the weight of official concern. David stepped forward immediately. "Just working through some training methodology differences. Rachel's approach is quite different from what our members are used to." The phrasing was masterful, acknowledging a problem while implying Rachel was the source of it. Tom nodded thoughtfully, his eyes scanning the scene with professional assessment. "Different how?" Tom inquired. Jake jumped in before Rachel could respond. "She's not really engaging with realistic scenarios. Keeps backing away, avoiding contact." "Self-defense is about avoiding unnecessary contact," Rachel interjected calmly. "The goal is escape and safety, not prolonged engagement." Tom's expression remained neutral, but Rachel caught the way his eyes flicked toward David before responding. "Both approaches have merit. Maybe we could see a compromise demonstration." Another reasonable suggestion that somehow felt like pressure. Rachel realized she was being maneuvered into a position where refusing would make her appear uncooperative, while agreeing would subject her to further harassment under the guise of professional development. "Of course," she said. "What did you have in mind?" "Something more dynamic," David suggested, his voice warm with apparent helpfulness. "Jake, why don't you show Rachel how we typically handle multiple attacker scenarios here?" Multiple attackers. The request escalated the situation significantly, moving from one-on-one training into territory that would require much more physical contact and create more opportunities for accidental, inappropriate behavior. Rachel's audio recorder continued its faithful documentation as David essentially green-lighted a scenario designed to overwhelm her. Jake's enthusiasm was immediate and obvious. "Perfect. Tom, you want to assist?" "Actually," Tom said, glancing at his watch, "I've got rounds to complete. Maybe bring in some of the other trainers?" Within minutes, 3 more male staff members had joined the demonstration area. Rachel recognized the pattern immediately. What had started as a simple new employee introduction was being systematically escalated into a scenario where she would be outnumbered 4-1 while David watched from a position of administrative authority. The audio recorder captured David's voice as he addressed the growing crowd. "This should be educational for everyone. Multiple attacker scenarios are some of the most challenging situations in self-defense. Educational." The word provided perfect cover for what was really happening. Rachel found herself standing in the center of a circle formed by Jake and 3 other male trainers, all of them significantly larger than her, while 20 members watched from the sidelines, and David positioned himself as the benevolent educator, documenting the whole thing for training purposes. "Standard rules," Jake announced. "Light contact only. Focus on technique demonstration." But Rachel had spent 3 years competing at national levels. She understood the difference between training energy and aggressive energy, and what she was feeling from the 4 men around her wasn't educational enthusiasm. It was predatory anticipation. The first demonstration came from behind, one of the trainers attempting what he called a realistic bear hug scenario. The contact was immediately inappropriate, lasting far longer than any legitimate technique demonstration required. Rachel dealt with it efficiently, breaking the hold and creating distance. But before she could reset her position, Jake initiated his own scenario. "Real attackers don't wait for you to get ready," he said, moving in aggressively from her left side. The timing was deliberate, designed to catch her off balance while she was still recovering from the previous encounter. Rachel adapted smoothly, redirecting Jake's energy and maintaining her centered position, but the pattern was becoming clear. This wasn't training. It was harassment disguised as education. "Excellent awareness," David called out approvingly. "But let's increase the pressure a bit. Real situations are chaotic." Increase the pressure. On David's signal, all 4 trainers began moving simultaneously, creating a genuinely threatening situation that had nothing to do with educational demonstration and everything to do with overwhelming Rachel through coordinated intimidation. What they hadn't counted on was Rachel's competition experience. Championship martial arts involved facing aggressive opponents who were actively trying to defeat you under pressure, with judges and audiences watching your every move. 4 men trying to intimidate her in a controlled environment was significantly less challenging than what she'd faced hundreds of times on competition mats. Rachel moved through their coordinated harassment like water flowing around rocks, efficient, controlled, never giving them the satisfaction of rattled composure or defensive reactions. Each time one of them created inappropriate contact, she dealt with it professionally and reset her position. Each time Jake escalated his aggression, she demonstrated superior technique without matching his energy. But the audio recorder caught what the audience couldn't see: the subtle coordination between the 4 men, the way they glanced toward David for approval before each escalation, the specific patterns in their movements that revealed extensive practice. This wasn't spontaneous training enthusiasm. This was a rehearsed performance designed to break her composure and provide David with justification for whatever administrative action he had planned. At 9:05 a.m., David called a halt. "Excellent work, everyone," he said, his voice carrying satisfied approval. "Rachel, that was quite impressive. Perhaps we could discuss some refinements to better match our facility's training philosophy." The request sounded supportive, professional, reasonable. But Rachel had heard those exact words before, the diplomatic language supervisors used when they were building a paper trail for disciplinary action. David was positioning himself as the helpful administrator, trying to integrate a difficult employee who didn't quite fit the established culture. "I'd welcome that discussion," Rachel replied. "My approach is always adaptable to facility needs." "Wonderful. My office in 10 minutes?" As the crowd dispersed, Rachel noticed the subtle dynamics at play. Jake and the other trainers clustered around David, their body language suggesting congratulatory backslapping. Tom Bradley reappeared from wherever he'd disappeared to during the harassment demonstration, checking in with David with the timing of someone who'd been monitoring from a distance. And several members of the audience approached Rachel with expressions of concern and quiet words of support. "That was uncomfortable to watch," one older woman whispered. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Rachel assured her. "Just working through different training philosophies." But Rachel's audio recorder had captured something the concerned member couldn't know. The way David's voice had carried a note of satisfaction when he called the halt, the specific timing of Tom's reappearance, the coordinated nature of what she'd just experienced. This wasn't about training philosophies. This was about systematic harassment, designed to create a hostile work environment that would justify her removal. In David's office, 10 minutes later, Rachel sat across from the program director's desk and noticed details that hadn't been visible during her initial interview. The positioning of his computer monitor to prevent visitors from seeing the screen. The way his desk phone was angled to capture conversations from the visitor chairs. The small recording device partially hidden behind a stack of training manuals. David was documenting their interactions, too. "That was quite a demonstration," David began, his tone warm and collegial. "Your technique is certainly unique." Different from what your members are used to? Rachel asked, deliberately echoing his earlier phrasing. Exactly. Our culture here emphasizes practical, dynamic training. Members expect to see real-world applications, not competition-style point scoring. The criticism was delivered with administrative smoothness, wrapped in facility-specific language that made Rachel's championship-level techniques sound impractical and disconnected from real self-defense needs. David was building his case methodically, creating documentation that would support whatever action he had planned. I understand, Rachel replied. Perhaps you could show me some examples of the specific techniques you prefer. The request caught David off guard for just a moment, long enough for Rachel to see his surprise before his administrative mask reasserted itself. He'd expected her to defend her methods or apologize for the perceived inadequacy. Instead, she'd asked him to demonstrate his expertise. Of course, David said, recovering smoothly, though I should mention that our approach tends to be more intensive than what you demonstrated today. Jake and the others have been developing our methodology for 3 years. It's quite refined. 3 years. The same time frame Rachel had been researching before accepting this position, during which 12 female instructors had left Riverside under various circumstances. The same 3 years during which the facility had developed its reputation for aggressive training methods that somehow only seemed to create problems for women. I'd like to learn from their experience, Rachel said. When would be a good time for additional training? David's fingers drummed against his desk in that same pattern Rachel had noticed during the demonstration. Well, we have an intensive session scheduled for next week. Though I should warn you, it's designed for our most committed instructors. Not everyone finds it suitable. The warning was delivered with paternal concern, but Rachel heard the underlying message. Another test? Another opportunity for coordinated harassment. Another chance for David to document her inability to adapt to facility culture. That sounds perfect, Rachel said. I'm very committed to making this work. David's smile seemed genuine, but his eyes remained calculating. Excellent. I'll have Jake coordinate the details with you. As Rachel left David's office, her audio recorder captured one final exchange between David and someone who'd entered as she departed. Tom Bradley's voice, low but clearly audible. How did it go? Exactly as planned, David replied. She's either going to break or quit. Either way, we'll have our documentation. Rachel's professional-grade recording equipment had captured every word with courtroom-quality clarity. What David and Tom didn't know was that their documentation was being automatically backed up to cloud servers that would preserve every second of their coordinated harassment campaign. The timestamp on Rachel's phone read 9:15 a.m. as she walked back toward the main training floor. 19 minutes until the contract auto-renewal that would lock in David's exclusive deal with Titan Security Solutions, the male-only training company that had been systematically eliminating female competition throughout the region. Rachel had 47 minutes when this started. Now she had 19 minutes and a complete audio record of David Brooks coordinating harassment against female instructors. The question was whether 19 minutes would be enough time to gather the additional evidence she needed to expose a conspiracy that reached far beyond one wellness center's toxic culture. Comment below. Have you ever witnessed systematic harassment at work? What would you do with 19 minutes to gather evidence that could expose an entire network of discrimination? Because what Rachel discovered next would prove that David's operation was bigger than anyone imagined. The main training floor had emptied considerably since the morning demonstration, leaving Rachel with space to think and plan. Her audio recorder had captured enough evidence to document harassment, but she needed more than just recorded conversations to expose the financial conspiracy underlying David's systematic elimination of female instructors. At 9:18 a.m., Rachel's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Check your email. You need to see this. A friend." The email contained a single attachment, a partial financial document showing quarterly payments from Riverside Community Wellness Center to something called Titan Sec Consulting Services. The amounts were significant, $60,000 per quarter, with notations indicating exclusive training partnership and facility security optimization. $240,000 per year. Rachel's mental math was quick and precise. Over 3 years, that represented $720,000 flowing from Riverside to a company she'd never heard of during her pre-employment research. A second email arrived 30 seconds later, this one containing a link to TitanSec's corporate filing documents. The ownership structure was buried in legal language, but the pattern was clear. Titan Security Solutions was a shell company with David Brooks listed as a silent partner, collecting payments for services that were never clearly defined. Rachel's investigation training kicked into high gear. Shell companies, financial kickbacks, systematic harassment of competitors. The pieces were forming a picture of corporate fraud on a scale that went far beyond workplace harassment. David wasn't just pushing women out because of personal bias. He was eliminating competition to protect a lucrative financial arrangement. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "Server room, 3rd floor. Code is 4817. Hurry." Rachel stared at the message, her mind racing through possibilities. Someone inside Riverside was feeding her information, someone with access to financial records and security codes. But who and why now? The answer came as she looked across the training floor and saw Tom Bradley watching her from the equipment storage area, his expression unreadable. When their eyes met, Tom gave the slightest nod toward the stairwell, then disappeared behind a rack of weight machines. Tom Bradley wasn't David's ally. He was Rachel's inside source. The realization shifted everything. Tom's perfectly timed appearance during the harassment demonstration, his convenient absence during the most problematic moments, his professional assessment of the situation without taking sides, all of it suddenly made sense through a different lens. Tom had been documenting David's behavior too, but from the inside, gathering evidence while maintaining his cover. Rachel made her way to the 3rd floor, noting the strategic positioning of security cameras that Tom would have access to from his position as head of security. The server room door was unmarked, tucked between a janitorial closet and an emergency exit. Code 4817 opened it immediately. Inside, Tom Bradley was waiting with a laptop displaying what looked like 3 years' worth of financial records. "I've been building this case for 18 months, Tom said without preamble. 12 women, Rachel. 12 qualified instructors systematically harassed, undermined, and forced out to protect David's arrangement with Titan Sec. The screen showed a detailed spreadsheet tracking the correlation between female instructor departures and increased payments to the shell company. Each woman's termination or resignation had been followed within weeks by elevated consulting fees and expanded security services. "You're FBI," Rachel said. It wasn't a question. Tom nodded. "Corporate Crimes Division. We've been investigating TitanSec's operations across multiple facilities. Riverside is their biggest account, but not their only one. David's model is being replicated in wellness centers throughout the region." The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Systematic gender discrimination disguised as quality control, shell companies funneling money through fake consulting contracts, coordination between multiple facilities to eliminate female competition in the fitness and self-defense industry. "Why reveal yourself now?" Rachel asked. "Because in 12 minutes, David's contract auto-renews with penalty clauses that will make it nearly impossible to break. Tom replied. And because you're the first instructor who came in with your own recording equipment and the skills to document everything in real time. He gestured to the laptop screen, which now displayed security camera footage from the morning demonstration. Your audio recordings combined with our video evidence will give us everything we need for federal charges. But we need David to incriminate himself directly, not just coordinate harassment through his proxies. How? Tom smiled grimly. By giving him exactly what he thinks he wants, a reason to terminate your employment with cause while he's being recorded. The plan was audacious and dangerous. Tom would use his security access to ensure every camera in the facility was recording at maximum resolution, while Rachel confronted David with evidence of his financial arrangement. David's response would either be complete cooperation and confession, or an escalation that would provide definitive proof of his guilt. He's going to call Jake and the others, Tom warned. Once he realizes you know about TitanSec, he'll try to create a situation where you appear to be the aggressor. Physical confrontation that justifies immediate termination. Let him try, Rachel said calmly. I've handled worse than Jake Morrison and 3 wannabe tough guys. Tom's expression remained serious. Rachel, these aren't just harassment artists anymore. If David's looking at federal fraud charges, he's going to be desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things. Rachel understood the warning, but she also understood opportunity. 12 women had been forced out of positions they'd earned, their careers derailed by systematic discrimination. A multi-facility conspiracy had been stealing money and eliminating competition for years, and in 9 minutes, David's contract renewal would make the whole operation significantly harder to dismantle. 9 minutes to expose a conspiracy that had destroyed careers and defrauded multiple businesses. What do you need from me? Rachel asked. Tom pulled up a different screen showing the facility's live stream system, a feature Rachel hadn't known existed. Every member has access to internal broadcasts through the Riverside app. Training demonstrations, safety announcements, emergency communications. If we activate the system, every conversation in the main training area gets streamed live to everyone who's ever been a member here. Live streaming, public exposure in real time, with automatic recording and no way for David to delete or modify the evidence after the fact. Every word, every action, every attempt at intimidation captured and broadcast to hundreds of witnesses simultaneously. How many people are we talking about? Rachel asked. Active membership is around 400. At 9:25 a.m. on a Wednesday, probably 60 or 70 people will be online and available for notification alerts. 70 witnesses to David's response when confronted with evidence of his conspiracy. 70 people who would see whether he chose cooperation or escalation. 70 potential victims of his discrimination scheme who would finally understand why so many qualified women had left the facility under mysterious circumstances. Rachel's phone showed 9:26 a.m. 8 minutes until contract renewal. 8 minutes until the automatic server backup that would archive all of David's financial records beyond the reach of federal investigators. Do it, Rachel said. Tom's fingers flew over the laptop keyboard, activating systems and protocols that would turn the next 8 minutes into the most documented confrontation in Riverside Community Wellness Center's history. Security cameras switched to high-resolution recording mode. The live stream system activated with alert notifications pushing to every member's phone. Audio capture systems engaged throughout the facility. You'll have about 30 seconds between activation and when David realizes what's happening, Tom explained. Once the live stream goes active, his phone will show the notification alert. That's when he'll understand the scope of what you're doing. Rachel nodded. her competition training providing the calm focus she needed. 30 seconds to begin the confrontation, establish the evidence, and force David into a position where his response would reveal his guilt to 70 witnesses and multiple recording systems. At 9:27 a.m., Rachel walked back onto the main training floor, where David was reviewing paperwork at the reception desk. Her phone showed 43 notifications as Riverside members began joining the live stream, drawn by alert messages promising, "Important facility announcement, live demonstration in progress." "David," Rachel called out, her voice carrying clearly across the space, "we need to discuss Titan Sec." David's head snapped up, his expression shifting from casual attention to sharp focus in the space of a heartbeat. Behind the reception desk, Jake Morrison and two other trainers suddenly appeared, their positioning too convenient to be coincidental. "I'm sorry," David said, his voice carefully neutral. "Titan Security Solutions," Rachel continued, walking closer while her hidden audio recorder captured every word. $720,000 over 3 years. Quite an expensive consulting arrangement for a wellness center. The color drained from David's face as he realized Rachel had access to financial information that should have been completely confidential. His eyes flicked toward his office, toward the trainers flanking the reception area, toward the exits. "I don't know what you're talking about," David said, but his voice carried none of its usual administrative confidence. Rachel pulled out her phone and began reading from Tom's documentation. Titan Sec Consulting Services, quarterly payments of $60,000, services listed as Facility Security Optimization and Training Methodology Consultation. Except Titan Sec doesn't exist as an operational company. It's a shell entity designed to funnel money to silent partners. David's phone buzzed with the live stream notification. Rachel watched his face as he glanced at the screen, saw the notification alert, realized that their conversation was being broadcast live to dozens of Riverside members. "You're making serious accusations," David said, his voice rising. "Accusations that could be considered defamatory." "I'm stating documented facts," Rachel replied calmly. "Facts that correlate directly with the systematic harassment of female instructors over the past 3 years. Jake Morrison stepped forward from behind the reception desk, his movement aggressive and purposeful. "I think you need to leave." "Actually," Rachel said, not taking her eyes off David, "I think David needs to explain why 12 qualified women have been forced out of positions they earned, all coinciding with increased payments to a shell company he partially owns." David's mask of professional composure finally cracked completely. "You have no idea what you're talking about, and you have no authority to access confidential business information." "I have every right to report suspected fraud to appropriate authorities," Rachel replied. "Which is exactly what I've done." The admission hit David like a physical blow. His eyes went wide as he realized the full scope of what Rachel was telling him. She hadn't just discovered his financial arrangement with Titan Sec. She'd already reported it to federal investigators. At 9:29 a.m., with 5 minutes remaining until contract renewal and 73 people watching the live stream, David Brooks made the choice that would define the rest of his life. Instead of cooperation, he chose escalation. "Jake," David said, his voice carrying clear command authority, "I think our new instructor is having some kind of breakdown. She's making wild accusations, threatening staff, creating a hostile environment for our members." The words were carefully chosen, designed to establish Rachel as the aggressor while justifying whatever response followed. Jake and the 2 other trainers began moving toward Rachel with coordinated precision, their positioning designed to surround and intimidate. But Rachel had spent 3 years facing aggressive opponents in high-pressure situations. And now she had something those championship matches never provided. 73 witnesses watching via live stream, multiple security cameras recording at maximum resolution, and the absolute certainty that David's response was providing perfect evidence of his guilt. "David," Rachel said calmly, "you have one opportunity to explain this situation honestly before federal investigators arrive." "Federal investigators?" David's voice cracked with genuine panic. "You're insane! Jake, call security. Call the police. This woman is clearly unstable." Tom Bradley's voice cut through the tension from across the training floor. "I am security, David, and the police are already here." Through the main entrance, 3 figures in FBI windbreakers walked purposefully toward the reception area where Rachel stood, surrounded by David's increasingly panicked conspiracy. Behind them, 2 local police officers took positions near the exits, preventing anyone from leaving until statements could be taken. The timestamp on Rachel's phone read 9:31 a.m. 3 minutes until contract renewal. 78 live stream viewers. Complete audio and video documentation of David Brooks attempting to use coordinated harassment to silence a whistleblower reporting federal fraud. David looked at the approaching FBI agents, at the live stream notification still glowing on his phone, at Rachel's calm expression as she stood in the center of a situation he'd completely lost control of. "This is insane," he said, his voice breaking with desperation. "She's the problem here. She's the one who doesn't fit our culture." Agent Patricia Santos of the FBI Corporate Crimes Division reached the reception area and displayed her credentials with professional efficiency. "Mr. Brooks, we need to discuss your business relationship with Titan Security Solutions and the systematic harassment of female employees at this facility." David's last chance for cooperation had arrived with 3 minutes remaining until his fraudulent contract locked in penalty clauses that would have protected his conspiracy for years to come. Rachel's audio recorder continued its faithful documentation as David Brooks faced the moment of truth that would determine whether justice was served or corruption prevailed. The countdown had reached its final minutes, and everything David had built through intimidation and financial fraud was about to be decided by his response to one simple question. Would he confess, or would he destroy himself trying to maintain a lie that 78 people were watching him tell in real time? At 9:32 a.m., David Brooks made his final choice. The next few minutes will determine if Rachel saves her career or loses everything. What do you think David's real plan is? Leave your theories below, because this ending is about to flip everything you thought you knew about systematic harassment, financial fraud, and what happens when 78 people watch a conspiracy collapse in real time. David's final choice came at 9:32 a.m., with the weight of federal charges, live-streamed evidence, and 3 years of systematic fraud crushing down on his shoulders. Agent Patricia Santos stood 3 feet away with her FBI credentials displayed, waiting for his response to questions about TitanSec and coordinated harassment. 78 Riverside members watched through their phones as David's face cycled through panic, calculation, and desperate determination. "This is all a misunderstanding," David said, his voice carrying the hollow ring of a man grasping for control he'd already lost. Rachel Stone was terminated this morning for creating a hostile work environment and making false accusations against staff members. The lie was delivered with administrative precision, but Agent Santos had heard identical deflections in dozens of corporate fraud cases. She glanced at Tom Bradley, who gave the slightest nod toward the security office where 3 years of documented evidence waited in digital storage. "Mr. Brooks," Agent Santos said calmly, We have audio recordings of you coordinating harassment against Ms. Stone less than 1 hour ago. We also have financial records showing illegal payments to a shell company you partially own. David's eye twitched at the mention of audio recordings. His gaze flicked toward Rachel's jacket pocket, where the professional recording device had been capturing every word since 8:47 a.m. Then his expression hardened with the desperate resolve of a man who'd decided his only option was complete denial. "I have no knowledge of any illegal payments," David stated flatly. TitanSec provides legitimate consulting services that have improved our facility's training protocols and member safety. Rachel watched David commit to his lie with the kind of clinical detachment her martial arts training had taught her. In competition, opponents often made critical errors when pressure mounted beyond their ability to adapt. David was making that error now, doubling down on easily disproven claims while federal agents stood ready to present contradictory evidence. Agent Santos nodded to her partner, Agent Michael Chen, who produced a tablet displaying financial documents that made David's face go completely white. The screen showed not just the TitanSec payments, but detailed analysis of shell company structures, kickback mechanisms, and coordination between multiple wellness facilities throughout the region. "Mr. Brooks," Agent Chen said, his voice carrying the methodical precision of someone who'd spent months building an airtight case. "We have documentation of your arrangement with TitanSec spanning 3 years, involving 7 facilities, and totaling over $4.2 million in fraudulent consulting fees." $4.2 million. The scope of David's operation was staggering, extending far beyond Riverside to encompass a regional network of systematic discrimination and financial fraud. Rachel realized she'd stumbled into something much larger than workplace harassment. She'd uncovered a conspiracy that had destroyed dozens of careers while funneling millions through fake consulting arrangements. David's breathing became shallow and rapid as the full scope of federal evidence was laid out in front of 78 live stream viewers. His eyes darted toward the exits where local police officers maintained their positions, toward Jake and the other trainers who were backing away from their positions near the reception desk, toward his office where Rachel suspected critical evidence was being automatically deleted even as they spoke. "I want my lawyer," David said, the words coming out strangled and desperate. "Absolutely, you're right," Agent Santos replied. "But first, we need to discuss the server deletion that's been happening since 9:25 a.m. The server deletion. Rachel's heart rate spiked as she realized what Agent Santos was telling them. David had been systematically destroying evidence for the past 7 minutes, using automated protocols to eliminate financial records, email communications, and documentation that would prove the full extent of his conspiracy. Tom Bradley stepped forward from his position near the security office, his expression grim. David triggered the emergency data purge as soon as Rachel mentioned TitanSec. 3 years of records are being wiped as we speak. The emergency data purge. Rachel understood immediately why the 47-minute deadline had been so critical. David's contract with TitanSec didn't just auto-renew at 9:34 a.m., it also triggered security protocols that would eliminate evidence of illegal arrangements if law enforcement intervention was detected. David had built a sophisticated system for destroying evidence of his crimes, and he'd activated it the moment he realized Rachel had access to financial information she should never have seen. In less than 2 minutes, at 9:34 a.m. precisely, 3 years of documentation proving systematic fraud and harassment would be permanently erased from Riverside's servers. Agent Santos spoke into her radio with urgent professionalism. "We need digital forensics in here immediately. Priority 1, evidence preservation." But Tom Bradley was already moving toward the server room, his security clearance providing access to systems David couldn't control remotely. "I've been monitoring the deletion process," Tom called over his shoulder as he headed for the stairs. "We have approximately 90 seconds before the automatic purge completes." 90 seconds to preserve evidence of a $4.2 million fraud conspiracy. 90 seconds to save documentation that would prove systematic harassment of dozens of women across multiple facilities. 90 seconds to prevent David from destroying 3 years of federal crimes through automated data destruction. Rachel's phone showed 9:33 a.m. 1 minute until the contract auto-renewal that would trigger the final phase of evidence deletion. 81 live stream viewers now, the number climbing as word spread through Riverside's membership about the unfolding federal investigation. David watched Tom disappear toward the server room and made a decision that revealed the true depth of his desperation. Instead of waiting for his lawyer or cooperating with federal agents, he pulled out his phone and began frantically typing commands that would accelerate the deletion process. "Stop," Agent Santos commanded, moving toward David with swift authority. But David was beyond rational response. 3 years of systematic fraud, millions of dollars in illegal payments, coordination with multiple facilities to eliminate female competition. All of it was about to be exposed unless he could complete the evidence destruction in the next 60 seconds. Rachel watched David's fingers fly across his phone screen, typing access codes and deletion commands with the frantic energy of a man trying to destroy evidence, while federal agents stood 3 feet away. The absurdity of the situation would have been laughable if the stakes weren't so enormous. Jake Morrison, who had been backing away from the reception area since the FBI arrived, suddenly stepped forward with renewed aggression. "This is insane. David's done nothing wrong. This woman comes in here making crazy accusations, and now federal agents are treating him like a criminal?" The intervention was perfectly timed to create distraction, while David completed his evidence destruction. Rachel recognized the coordination immediately. Jake was providing cover for David's final desperate attempt to eliminate proof of their conspiracy. "Jake," Agent Chen said calmly, "you're interfering with a federal investigation." "I'm protecting my boss from false accusations," Jake replied, moving closer to Agent Santos in a manner that forced her to shift her attention away from David's phone. But what Jake didn't expect was the signal he'd just given to 4 other trainers positioned throughout the facility. At David's desperate nod, all 5 men began moving toward Rachel with coordinated precision that revealed extensive practice. This wasn't spontaneous protection of their boss. This was a final, coordinated attempt to create chaos that would allow David to complete his evidence destruction and potentially escape federal custody. Rachel saw the coordination developing and realized immediately what was happening. 5 men, all significantly larger than her, all moving with tactical positioning that would surround and overwhelm her while federal agents were distracted by David's evidence destruction efforts. The 91 live stream viewers were about to witness exactly what the video title had promised. 5 men versus 1 woman in a confrontation that would demonstrate whether Rachel's championship martial arts background was sufficient to handle coordinated attack by multiple opponents. "Rachel, get behind us!" Agent Santos called, recognizing the tactical situation developing. But Rachel had spent 3 years facing aggressive opponents under pressure, and she understood something the federal agents couldn't know. 5 untrained men attacking with anger and desperation were significantly less dangerous than 1 trained opponent attacking with strategy and skill. "I've got this," Rachel said calmly, moving to the center of the training floor where she'd have space to maneuver. Jake reached her first, lunging forward with a haymaker punch that carried all his frustration about female instructors challenging his authority. Rachel sidestepped with minimal movement, redirecting his momentum with a precise hip throw that sent him sliding across the polished floor into a stack of yoga mats. The second trainer, emboldened by Jake's aggression, attempted a tackle from Rachel's left side. She pivoted smoothly, catching his arm in a joint lock that controlled his entire body mass, then released him with a controlled throw that deposited him next to Jake in the yoga mat pile. "Holy cow!" someone whispered from the live stream audience gathering near the windows. Two more trainers approached simultaneously, trying to overwhelm Rachel through coordinated timing. She moved between them like water flowing around stones, using their coordination against them by redirecting the first man's energy into his partner, creating a collision that left both of them tangled and off balance on the training room floor. The fifth man, seeing four colleagues neutralized in less than 30 seconds, hesitated just long enough for Rachel to demonstrate the difference between aggression and technique. A single, precise movement caught his wrist, redirected his entire body weight, and deposited him gently but firmly on the floor next to his companions. 5 men down. Total elapsed time, 37 seconds. 0 injuries to anyone involved, including Rachel's attackers, who'd been handled with sufficient control to prevent harm while demonstrating complete tactical superiority. The training floor fell silent, except for heavy breathing from the 5 men trying to untangle themselves from the yoga mat pile they'd been systematically deposited into. 91 live stream viewers had just watched a championship-level martial artist demonstrate exactly why systematic harassment based on gender stereotypes was fundamentally flawed. Rachel stood in the center of the training floor, not even breathing heavily, while 5 men who'd attempted coordinated intimidation struggled to regain their footing. The demonstration was more effective than any formal presentation could have been. Practical proof that competence mattered more than assumptions about physical capability. "Outstanding technique," Agent Santos said with professional appreciation. "But next time, let federal agents handle tactical situations." David Brooks, who'd been frantically typing evidence destruction commands during the 37-second demonstration, looked up to find his 5-man distraction force completely neutralized, and federal agents waiting patiently for him to finish incriminating himself through obstruction of justice charges. "Impossible," David whispered, staring at Rachel with the expression of a man watching his worldview collapse in real time. Rachel looked directly into the security camera that was broadcasting to 91 viewers and spoke the words that would become the signature quote for systematic harassment prevention training throughout the wellness industry. "Respect isn't optional. Proof isn't either." But Rachel had spent 3 years competing in environments where split-second decisions determined victory or defeat. She understood exactly what Jake was doing and why, and she had no intention of allowing David's evidence destruction to succeed while his accomplice created tactical distractions. "Agent Santos," Rachel said clearly, her voice cutting through Jake's bluster, "David is accessing server deletion protocols through his phone right now. The timestamp shows 53 seconds until completion." David's head snapped toward Rachel, his expression twisted with rage and panic. "You've destroyed everything," he snarled. 3 years of building something real, something that actually worked, and you've destroyed it all. The admission hung in the air like a physical presence. David had just confessed to building a 3-year operation while being recorded by professional equipment and broadcast live to 91 Riverside members. But more importantly, he'd revealed the psychological framework underlying his systematic harassment. He genuinely believed he'd been building something valuable by eliminating female competition through coordinated intimidation. Agent Santos moved with swift professionalism, taking David's phone, while Agent Chen secured Jake with practiced efficiency. The other 4 trainers remained in their yoga mat pile, too embarrassed by their comprehensive defeat to attempt further interference. But the damage had been done. David's evidence destruction protocols had been running for 8 minutes. Automated systems deleting financial records, email communications, and documentation faster than any manual intervention could stop. Rachel's phone showed 9:34 a.m. exactly. The contract auto-renewal moment had arrived, triggering the final phase of David's evidence protection system. Somewhere in Riverside's server room, the last remnants of documentation proving systematic fraud were being permanently erased. Or so David believed. Tom Bradley's voice crackled through the facility's intercom system with perfect timing. Evidence preservation complete. All data successfully backed up to federal servers before deletion protocols could activate. The words hit David like a physical blow. His legs actually buckled as he realized that Tom's 18-month investigation had included comprehensive evidence preservation measures that rendered his sophisticated deletion system completely useless. "Impossible," David whispered, but his voice carried the hollow desperation of a man watching his carefully constructed defense collapse in real time. "Tom's been mirroring your servers to federal storage since January," Agent Santos explained with clinical precision. "Every email, every financial transaction, every coordination communication with TitanSec and affiliated facilities. We have complete documentation of your entire operation." Rachel felt something shift in her chest. Not relief exactly, but the satisfaction of watching systematic injustice finally meet systematic justice. For 3 years, David had used sophisticated planning and technological resources to destroy women's careers through coordinated harassment. Now those same technological resources were being used to document his crimes with precision that would make conviction inevitable. The livestream counter showed 94 viewers as David's final desperate gambit collapsed into federal evidence. Jake Morrison and the 4 other trainers struggled to extract themselves from the yoga mat pile where Rachel's 37-second demonstration had deposited them, their aggressive loyalty to David having earned them obstruction charges along with comprehensive public humiliation. David himself remained free for the moment, but Agent Santos was reading from a list of federal crimes that would keep him occupied with legal defense for years to come. Wire fraud, conspiracy, civil rights violations, and systematic harassment based on gender discrimination, Agent Santos recited with professional efficiency. "Mr. Brooks, you have the right to remain silent, but based on the evidence we've collected, silence might be your wisest choice." David's phone buzzed with a notification from the live stream he'd forgotten was still broadcasting. 94 Riverside members had just watched him confess to building a systematic harassment operation while attempting to destroy federal evidence, immediately followed by watching his coordinated intimidation force comprehensively defeated by the woman they'd been trying to eliminate. His reputation, his career, and his freedom were gone, eliminated as efficiently as he'd eliminated 12 women's livelihoods over 3 years. But Rachel's investigation had revealed something even more significant than David's individual crimes. The coordination with multiple facilities, the $4.2 million scope, the sophisticated evidence destruction systems, all of it pointed to a regional network of systematic discrimination that extended far beyond one wellness center's toxic culture. Tom Bradley returned from the server room carrying a laptop that displayed real-time federal backup confirmation. Every file, every financial record, every coordination email between David and TitanSec facilities throughout the region, all of it preserved with courtroom-quality documentation that would provide evidence for prosecutions across multiple jurisdictions. "Rachel," Tom said, his expression mixing professional satisfaction with genuine admiration, "your 47-minute window provided everything we needed to document not just David's operation, but the entire regional network." 47 minutes. From 8:47 a.m., when David had made his fateful phone call about showing women where they belonged, to 9:34 a.m. when federal evidence preservation had rendered his deletion protocols useless. 47 minutes of systematic documentation that transformed Rachel's first day of harassment into a complete federal case against organized discrimination. Agent Chen finished securing Jake Morrison and turned his attention to the other trainers who'd participated in both the morning's harassment demonstration and the failed coordinated attack that had ended with them piled in yoga mats. Gentlemen, we'll need statements from each of you regarding your knowledge of TitanSec arrangements and coordination of harassment against female instructors. The trainers who'd seemed so confident during their coordinated intimidation of Rachel, and who'd seemed even more confident during their attempted 5-on-1 attack, now looked like exactly what they were: low-level participants in a federal conspiracy who were about to discover that following David's orders had made them accessories to multiple felonies, with their comprehensive defeat by a single woman broadcast live to nearly 100 witnesses. Rachel watched the systematic collapse of David's operation with the clinical detachment her competition training had taught her. But underneath that calm assessment, she felt something deeper: vindication for 12 women whose careers had been destroyed, whose talents had been wasted, whose contributions had been eliminated through systematic harassment disguised as quality control. At 9:36 a.m., Agent Santos approached Rachel with the professional courtesy federal investigators showed key witnesses who'd provided critical evidence and demonstrated remarkable composure under coordinated physical attack. Ms. Stone, we'll need comprehensive statements from you, but I want you to know that your documentation made this investigation possible. Without your recording equipment and your willingness to confront a dangerous situation, including physical confrontation with 5 attackers, David's network could have continued operating indefinitely. Rachel nodded, understanding that her role was transitioning from undercover witness to federal testimony provider. The next months would involve depositions, court appearances, and detailed reconstructions of everything she'd experienced during her brief employment at Riverside Community Wellness Center. But first, there was immediate aftermath to address. 94 Riverside members had watched their facility's program director confess to systematic fraud while being arrested by federal agents, immediately followed by watching 5 male trainers attempt coordinated assault on a female instructor who defeated all of them in 37 seconds. The live stream had documented harassment, financial conspiracy, evidence destruction, and complete tactical superiority in real time, creating a public record that would reshape how wellness centers approached both gender discrimination and competence assessment throughout the region. David Brooks, who'd spent 3 years believing he could systematically eliminate female competition through coordinated harassment, now faced federal charges that would eliminate his freedom for the next decade. The irony was poetic, but Rachel found more satisfaction in the broader implications. 12 women would receive vindication, dozens of future victims would be protected, and a regional network of systematic discrimination would be dismantled through federal prosecution. Jake Morrison, who'd initiated the 5-man attack thinking superior numbers would overcome superior skill, now faced not only federal charges but viral video evidence of his comprehensive defeat that would follow him for the rest of his career. The other 4 trainers shared his legal and professional fate, their coordinated intimidation attempt having been transformed into coordinated humiliation broadcast to growing audiences. Tom Bradley approached Rachel as federal agents completed their evidence collection, his expression mixing professional respect with personal gratitude. 18 months of investigation, and we could never get the direct evidence we needed until you walked through those doors with recording equipment, championship-level composure, and the martial arts skills to handle coordinated physical intimidation. "Why me?" Rachel asked. "Why not approach one of the previous 12 instructors?" Tom's expression grew somber. "We tried. 3 of them were willing to provide testimony, but without real-time evidence of harassment coordination and without the ability to handle physical escalation, their experiences were dismissed as individual personality conflicts. David's system was sophisticated specifically because it created plausible deniability for every individual incident. Plausible deniability. Rachel understood immediately what Tom meant. David's harassment system had been designed to appear reasonable when examined in isolation. Training methodology differences. Cultural fit assessments. Performance evaluations based on subjective criteria. Only when viewed as a systematic pattern over 3 years, combined with evidence of coordinated physical intimidation and financial fraud, did the discriminatory intent become undeniable. Her 47-minute window had provided real-time documentation that eliminated plausible deniability. Audio recordings of David coordinating harassment, financial evidence of his fraudulent consulting arrangement, video footage of systematic intimidation, coordinated physical attack captured on live stream, complete tactical defeat of 5 male attackers by 1 female instructor, and his own confession to building something he believed was valuable. All of it captured with precision that made legal defense virtually impossible. Agent Santos finished her evidence collection and approached Rachel with the kind of professional courtesy federal investigators reserved for witnesses who'd provided extraordinary cooperation under dangerous circumstances. Ms. Stone, this case will likely take 18 months to complete prosecution. During that time, you'll be the primary witness for systematic harassment charges that affect multiple facilities throughout the region. Your demonstration today has also provided evidence of coordinated physical intimidation that elevates several charges to federal felony level. 18 months of legal proceedings. Rachel had expected some follow-up requirements, but the scope of her involvement was larger than she'd anticipated. Her decision to accept employment at Riverside had transformed from a career move into a federal investigation that would consume the next 1.5 years of her life. "What about the other women?" Rachel asked. "The 12 instructors who were forced out? They'll be primary witnesses for the civil rights violations," Agent Chen replied. "Your documentation provides the systematic evidence their individual experiences couldn't establish. Your physical demonstration today proves that their elimination wasn't based on legitimate competence concerns. Together, you'll present a comprehensive case that proves intentional gender discrimination across multiple facilities." The other women. Rachel realized that her investigation had given voices back to 12 qualified professionals whose careers had been derailed through systematic harassment. Women who had been dismissed as individual personality conflicts would now be recognized as victims of organized discrimination, and her martial arts demonstration had proven that their elimination had nothing to do with physical capability or professional competence. At 9:42 a.m., David Brooks was formally arrested on federal charges that would reshape wellness center employment practices throughout the region. As Agent Santos read his rights, the livestream counter showed 97 viewers. Nearly 100 Riverside members had watched systematic harassment collapse into systematic justice, followed by coordinated intimidation collapse into individual humiliation. David's expression had moved beyond panic into something resembling catatonic shock. 3 years of sophisticated planning, millions in fraudulent payments, coordination with multiple facilities to eliminate female competition, followed by a final desperate attempt at coordinated physical intimidation. All of it destroyed by one woman with recording equipment, martial arts skills, and 47 minutes of systematic documentation. Jake Morrison and the 4 other trainers who'd participated in both the harassment demonstration and the failed coordinated attack were released pending further investigation, but their employment at Riverside was effectively terminated. Their coordination in systematic intimidation followed by their comprehensive defeat in coordinated physical attack, had been captured on multiple recording systems and broadcast live to nearly 100 witnesses. The yoga mats, where they'd been systematically deposited during Rachel's 37-second demonstration, would require professional cleaning, but that seemed appropriate, given the mess they'd made of their own careers through systematic harassment and coordinated assault. Rachel's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Thank you. This is Jennifer Walsh, former instructor 2022. We never thought anyone would believe us, and we definitely never thought anyone would be able to handle 5 of them at once." More messages followed rapidly. Sarah Martinez, former instructor 2021. "That was the most satisfying 37 seconds I've ever watched on video." Lisa Thompson, former instructor 2023. "You proved everything we said about competence versus intimidation." Patricia Rodriguez, former instructor 2022. "5 guys couldn't do what they spent months trying to do to each of us individually. One by one, the 12 women whose careers had been destroyed by David's systematic harassment were reaching out to express gratitude for vindication they'd never expected to receive, along with admiration for the physical demonstration that had proven their elimination was based on discrimination rather than legitimate competence concerns. The emotional weight of their messages hit Rachel harder than the physical confrontation with Jake and his 4 accomplices. These were qualified professionals whose talents had been wasted, whose contributions had been eliminated, whose careers had been derailed by systematic discrimination disguised as facility culture assessment. "Ms. Stone," Agent Santos said as federal evidence collection concluded, "you should know that your documentation will likely prevent similar operations throughout the wellness industry. The legal precedent we establish here will provide tools for federal prosecution of systematic harassment that didn't exist before. Your physical demonstration today will also be used in training federal agents to recognize coordinated intimidation tactics." Legal precedent and federal training applications. Rachel realized her experience at Riverside would influence both workplace protection policies and law enforcement procedures far beyond the immediate case. Federal courts would use her documentation to establish standards for recognizing systematic harassment, defining evidence requirements for discrimination prosecution, and creating deterrent consequences for facilities that eliminated female employees through coordinated intimidation. Her 37-second defeat of 5 coordinated attackers would become a training video demonstrating that physical intimidation based on gender stereotypes was not only morally wrong, but tactically ineffective when confronting properly trained opponents. Tom Bradley approached Rachel as federal agents prepared to transport David to detention facilities pending trial. "There's something else you should know," Tom said quietly. "TitanSec operates 17 facilities throughout 3 states. Your evidence will be used for federal prosecution across the entire network. Your demonstration today will be shown in every case to prove that eliminating female instructors wasn't based on legitimate physical capability concerns." 17 facilities. The scope of systematic discrimination was staggering, representing hundreds of women whose careers had been affected by coordinated harassment designed to eliminate female competition in the fitness and self-defense industry. Rachel's decision to accept employment at Riverside, her choice to bring professional recording equipment, her willingness to confront systematic harassment, and her ability to handle coordinated physical intimidation, all of it had created a federal case that would dismantle a regional network of organized discrimination while providing video evidence that physical competence had nothing to do with gender stereotypes. At 9:48 a.m., David Brooks was escorted from Riverside Community Wellness Center in federal custody, his systematic harassment operation replaced by systematic justice that would protect women throughout the region for years to come. Jake Morrison and his 4 accomplices were escorted to separate vehicles, their coordinated intimidation attempt having resulted in coordinated humiliation that would follow them throughout their careers. The livestream counter showed 103 viewers as federal agents completed their evidence collection. Over 100 Riverside members had witnessed the collapse of systematic discrimination in real time, followed by the complete failure of coordinated physical intimidation, creating public awareness that would prevent similar operations from establishing themselves in wellness facilities throughout the area. Rachel stood in the main training area where her employment had begun less than 2 hours earlier, surrounded by evidence collection equipment, federal documentation that would reshape workplace protection policies across multiple industries, and yoga mats that would forever remind people of what happened when 5 men tried to physically intimidate one woman who actually knew what she was doing. Her professional recording device showed 2 hours and 1 minute of continuous documentation, from David's opening statement about women playing dress-up in a man's world to his final confession about building something valuable through systematic harassment, to the complete tactical failure of his coordinated intimidation attempt. Agent Chen approached Rachel with the professional courtesy federal investigators showed witnesses who'd provided extraordinary cooperation under dangerous circumstances. Ms. Stone, we'll need you to remain available for depositions and court testimony, but your active involvement in the investigation is complete. You've provided everything we need for comprehensive prosecution, including video evidence that will revolutionize how federal agents recognize and respond to coordinated workplace intimidation. Active involvement complete. Rachel realized she was transitioning from undercover witness to federal testimony provider, her role changing from documentation gatherer to evidence presenter. The next 18 months would involve legal proceedings rather than investigative work, though her 37-second demonstration would likely be referenced in federal training programs for years to come. "What happens to Riverside?" Rachel asked, looking around the training facility that had become the epicenter of a federal discrimination case and the site of the most one-sided coordinated attack in wellness center history. Tom Bradley answered with the authority of someone who'd spent 18 months building the investigation while watching systematic harassment destroy careers. New management, comprehensive policy revision, federal oversight to ensure compliance with anti-discrimination requirements, and probably a permanent display commemorating the day 5 men learned that assumptions about physical capability can be definitively disproven in 37 seconds. New management and permanent commemoration. Rachel felt satisfaction knowing that Riverside's members would continue having access to fitness and self-defense training, but without the systematic harassment that had eliminated 12 qualified female instructors over 3 years, and with a permanent reminder that competence mattered more than stereotypes. Her phone buzzed with another message from one of the previous instructors. "I'm a lawyer now. Changed careers after what happened here. Want to represent you and the others pro bono for civil litigation. Also want video rights to use your demonstration in discrimination cases nationwide. Civil litigation and national video distribution." Rachel realized that federal criminal prosecution was only the beginning of legal consequences David would face, and that her 37-second demonstration would become evidence in discrimination cases throughout the country. The 12 women whose careers had been destroyed through systematic harassment would likely pursue civil remedies that would provide financial compensation for their losses, while her physical demonstration would provide evidence that their elimination had nothing to do with legitimate competence concerns and everything to do with gender-based discrimination. At 9:53 a.m., Agent Santos completed evidence documentation and approached Rachel with information about next steps in the federal case. "Ms. Stone, you'll be contacted within 72 hours to schedule formal deposition testimony. The audio evidence you provided will be the foundation for systematic harassment charges across multiple facilities. The video evidence of coordinated physical intimidation will be used to establish federal precedent for prosecuting workplace assault disguised as cultural assessment. Rachel nodded, understanding that her 47-minute window of documentation, combined with her 37-second demonstration of tactical superiority, had created legal obligations that would extend far beyond her brief employment at Riverside. But those obligations came with the satisfaction of knowing that systematic discrimination had been replaced by systematic justice, and that coordinated intimidation had been replaced by comprehensive humiliation, broadcast to over 100 witnesses. The facility's intercom crackled with Tom Bradley's voice, addressing the handful of members who'd remained in the building during the federal investigation and coordinated assault aftermath. Riverside will resume normal operations tomorrow under interim management. All current memberships remain valid, and we'll be implementing enhanced anti-harassment policies to ensure everyone feels safe and welcome here. Also, the yoga mats will be professionally cleaned. Enhanced anti-harassment policies and professional yoga mat cleaning. The changes at Riverside would serve as a model for wellness facilities throughout the region, providing concrete examples of how systematic discrimination could be prevented through proper management protocols and federal oversight, while the yoga mat cleaning would serve as a reminder that coordinated physical intimidation could result in public humiliation requiring professional remediation. Rachel gathered her belongings from the instructor's storage area, noting the irony that she'd come to Riverside seeking employment, and instead had become the key witness in a federal case that would reshape workplace protection policies across multiple industries, while also providing viral video evidence that would educate people about the relationship between stereotypes and actual competence. Her professional recording equipment had captured 106 minutes of systematic documentation, from David's opening harassment coordination to his final confession about building valuable operations through female employee elimination, followed by the complete failure of coordinated physical intimidation that had been designed to support his systematic harassment operation. At 9:57 a.m., Rachel Stone walked out of Riverside Community Wellness Center for the first time as a federal witness rather than a harassment victim, and as the creator of viral video content that would be referenced in workplace discrimination cases for years to come. Behind her, evidence collection continued under FBI supervision, while yoga mats underwent professional cleaning. Ahead of her, 18 months of legal proceedings would provide vindication for 12 women and protection for countless others, while her demonstration video would educate people about the dangers of assuming physical capability based on gender stereotypes. The transformation was complete. Systematic harassment had become systematic justice. Coordinated discrimination had become coordinated prosecution. Coordinated intimidation had become coordinated humiliation, and David's sophisticated operation for eliminating female competition had become sophisticated evidence for federal civil rights enforcement, supported by video proof that his elimination criteria were based on prejudice rather than legitimate competence assessment. Rachel's phone showed 43 new messages from previous Riverside instructors, current members expressing support, federal officials coordinating testimony schedules, and requests for video licensing rights from discrimination attorneys throughout the country. Her decision to confront David with evidence of Titan-sex fraudulent arrangement had created ripple effects that would influence workplace discrimination policy for years to come, while her 37-second demonstration would provide educational content about the dangers of stereotypical thinking for generations. 1 week after her 47-minute documentation and 37-second demonstration at Riverside Community Wellness Center, Rachel received notification that David Brooks had accepted a plea agreement rather than face trial on federal charges that could have resulted in 25 years imprisonment. His confession provided additional evidence for prosecutions at 16 other TitanSec facilities throughout 3 states, while video of his coordinated intimidation attempt would be used in federal training programs for law enforcement personnel. Jake Morrison and his 4 accomplices received probation and community service in exchange for testimony about David's coordination methods, along with permanent viral video evidence of their comprehensive defeat that would follow them throughout their careers. Their cooperation provided details about systematic harassment techniques that would be used to train federal investigators in recognition of similar operations, while their tactical failure provided educational content about the dangers of assuming physical capability based on gender. Tom Bradley received commendation from the FBI Corporate Crimes Division for his 18-month undercover investigation that had documented systematic discrimination across multiple facilities. His work became a model for detecting organized workplace harassment disguised as cultural assessment. While the video evidence he'd helped capture became required, viewing for federal agents learning to recognize coordinated intimidation tactics. 2 weeks after David's arrest, Rachel received a formal offer to serve as Director of Safety and Anti-Harassment Training for a consortium of 12 wellness facilities throughout the region. The position would involve developing protocols that prevented systematic discrimination while maintaining high professional standards for instruction, supported by video evidence demonstrating that competence assessment should be based on actual capability rather than stereotypical assumptions. The irony was beautiful. Rachel's expertise in recognizing and documenting harassment, combined with her demonstrated ability to handle coordinated physical intimidation, had made her the ideal candidate to prevent similar operations from developing at other facilities. Her championship-level martial arts skills, combined with her federal witness experience and viral video content, created qualifications no other candidate could match. 3 weeks after her documentation at Riverside, Rachel stood in the main training area of Peak Performance Wellness Center, addressing 43 new staff members about harassment prevention protocols that had been developed based on her federal testimony and supported by video evidence of what happened when systematic harassment escalated to coordinated physical intimidation. Systematic harassment succeeds through plausible deniability, Rachel explained to the mixed group of male and female fitness professionals. Individual incidents appear reasonable when examined separately, but reveal discriminatory patterns when analyzed systematically. Physical intimidation based on gender stereotypes fails because assumptions about capability are often wrong. She played a brief clip from the Riverside video showing 5 men attempting coordinated attack and being systematically defeated in 37 seconds. The educational impact was immediate and lasting, visual proof that competence mattered more than assumptions. The training program she'd developed incorporated lessons learned from David's operation, how financial incentives could motivate discrimination, how administrative language could disguise harassment as quality control, how coordination between multiple participants could create environments hostile to specific groups, and how physical intimidation based on stereotypes could result in public humiliation when confronting properly trained opponents. Recognition is the first step in prevention, Rachel continued, displaying audio waveform analysis that showed how professional recording equipment could document harassment that might otherwise be dismissed as personality conflicts, followed by video analysis showing how coordinated attack could be systematically countered through proper training and technique. Her training protocols had been adopted by 47 wellness facilities throughout the region, creating standardized approaches to harassment prevention that eliminated opportunities for systematic discrimination to develop undetected, while her video content provided educational material that would prevent future intimidation attempts based on gender stereotypes. 1 month after her federal testimony, Rachel received notification that the civil litigation filed by the 12 former Riverside instructors had been settled for $4.7 million, providing financial compensation that acknowledged the career damage they'd suffered through systematic harassment. The settlement amount exceeded the total fraudulent payments David had received through TitanSec, creating financial consequences that would deter similar operations throughout the wellness industry. While Rachel's video demonstration had provided proof that their elimination wasn't based on legitimate competence concerns, the settlement amount included additional compensation for the humiliation and stress the women had experienced, with Rachel's video serving as evidence that their treatment had been based on discriminatory assumptions rather than actual capability assessment. Jennifer Walsh, the former instructor who'd become a lawyer after being forced out of Riverside, sent Rachel a message expressing gratitude that extended beyond personal vindication. "Your documentation didn't just give us justice. It gave us proof that we weren't crazy, weren't difficult, weren't the problem. That validation is worth more than any financial settlement. Your demonstration proved we were eliminated because of discrimination, not because of any legitimate concerns about our capabilities." Validation and proof of discrimination. Rachel realized that systematic harassment succeeded partly because it convinced victims they were responsible for problems created by coordinated discrimination. Her documentation had provided objective evidence that eliminated victim self-doubt while proving perpetrator guilt, while her physical demonstration had definitively proven that elimination criteria were based on prejudice rather than legitimate assessment. 6 weeks after David's arrest, Rachel received an invitation to address the National Association of Fitness Professionals about systematic harassment, recognition, and prevention. Her presentation would be attended by representatives from over 300 facilities throughout the country, with video evidence from the Riverside incident serving as primary educational content. The invitation represented recognition that her experience at Riverside had national implications for workplace discrimination prevention. Her 47-minute documentation combined with her 37-second demonstration had become a model for systematic harassment recognition that extended far beyond the wellness industry. 2 months after her federal testimony, Rachel attended David Brooks's sentencing hearing, where he received 42 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation. His systematic harassment operation had been completely dismantled, his fraudulent financial arrangements had been terminated, and his coordination network across multiple facilities had been eliminated through federal prosecution, while video evidence of his final intimidation attempt provided educational content that would prevent similar operations throughout the region. During the hearing, David's lawyer attempted to characterize his actions as misguided business practices rather than systematic discrimination. But Rachel's audio documentation provided undeniable evidence of intentional harassment coordination, while her video demonstration proved that elimination of female instructors wasn't based on legitimate competence concerns, making such arguments ineffective. Judge Patricia Morrison, in delivering David's sentence, referenced Rachel's courage in confronting systematic harassment and coordinated intimidation. Ms. Stone's willingness to document and expose organized discrimination, followed by her ability to defend herself against coordinated physical attack, has protected countless women from similar harassment. Her actions exemplify the citizen responsibility that makes civil rights enforcement possible, while her demonstration provides educational evidence that will prevent future intimidation based on gender stereotypes. Citizen responsibility and educational evidence. Rachel realized that her decision to bring recording equipment to Riverside had been motivated by self-protection, but had resulted in community protection that extended far beyond her individual experience, while her martial arts skills had provided evidence that would educate people about the dangers of stereotypical assumptions. 3 months after her documentation at Riverside, Rachel was offered a position with the FBI Corporate Crimes Division as a consultant specializing in systematic harassment recognition and coordinated intimidation response. The role would involve training federal investigators in techniques for detecting organized discrimination disguised as legitimate business practices, while her video content would be used to educate agents about the potential for physical escalation and the importance of recognizing actual competence versus stereotypical assumptions. The offer represented recognition that her experience had created expertise unavailable through traditional law enforcement training. Her combination of victim perspective, documentation skills, federal testimony experience, and demonstrated ability to handle coordinated physical intimidation provided unique qualifications for harassment investigation work. Rachel declined the FBI position, choosing instead to continue her work developing anti-harassment protocols for wellness facilities throughout the region. Her decision reflected understanding that prevention was more valuable than prosecution, that creating environments where systematic harassment couldn't develop was preferable to dismantling such operations after they damaged multiple careers, and that education about competence versus stereotypes could prevent future intimidation attempts based on gender assumptions. 4 months after David's arrest, Riverside Community Wellness Center reopened under new management with comprehensive anti-harassment policies that served as a model for facilities throughout the region. Membership increased by 37% as the facility's reputation shifted from toxic workplace to harassment prevention leader, with many new members specifically requesting to train at the location where systematic discrimination had been comprehensively defeated. Rachel was invited to conduct the first self-defense demonstration under the new management, returning to the training floor where her federal testimony had begun and where she'd demonstrated the difference between stereotypes and reality in 37 seconds. This time, the demonstration proceeded without coordination, intimidation, or administrative manipulation. Just professional instruction delivered to engaged members who respected expertise regardless of gender and understood the importance of actual competence over stereotypical assumptions. The transformation was complete. Where systematic harassment had once eliminated female instructors, systematic justice now protected them. Where financial fraud had once motivated discrimination, federal oversight now prevented it. Where coordinated intimidation had once dominated facility culture, professional respect now prevailed. Where stereotypical assumptions had once determined employment decisions, demonstrated competence now provided the only relevant criteria. 5 months after her 47-minute documentation and 37-second demonstration, Rachel received a letter from Patricia Rodriguez, one of the former Riverside instructors whose career had been destroyed by David's harassment operation. "I'm teaching again at a facility that appreciates competence over compliance and actual capability over gender assumptions. Your courage gave all of us our professional lives back. Your demonstration proved that our elimination had nothing to do with legitimate concerns and everything to do with discrimination. Professional lives restored and discrimination exposed." Rachel understood that her confrontation with David had created ripple effects extending far beyond federal prosecution. 12 women had been able to resume careers that systematic harassment had derailed, their talents no longer wasted by coordinated discrimination, while video evidence had provided definitive proof that their elimination had been based on prejudice rather than legitimate assessment. 6 months after David's arrest, the National Association of Fitness Professionals released new industry standards for harassment prevention that incorporated lessons learned from the Riverside case. Rachel's documentation techniques were included in mandatory training for facility managers throughout the country. while her demonstration video became required viewing for understanding the relationship between stereotypes and actual competence in physical capability assessment. The industry standards represented institutionalization of protection measures that would prevent similar operations from developing in wellness facilities nationwide. Her 47-minute window, combined with her 37-second demonstration, had created permanent changes in professional practices across an entire industry. At the 6-month anniversary of her federal testimony, Rachel stood again in Riverside's main training area, now serving as Director of Safety for a consortium of wellness facilities that had adopted her anti-harassment protocols. The position provided opportunities to prevent systematic discrimination while maintaining the professional standards that made quality instruction possible, supported by video evidence that educated people about the dangers of stereotypical thinking. Harassment prevention isn't about lowering standards, Rachel explained to a group of facility managers from throughout the region. It's about ensuring that standards are applied fairly, based on actual competence rather than stereotypical assumptions, as demonstrated by the video evidence from this facility. She played the Riverside clip showing systematic defeat of coordinated intimidation in 37 seconds, followed by discussion of how the incident proved that elimination of qualified instructors had been based on discrimination rather than legitimate concerns about capability. Her prevention protocols had been implemented in 83 wellness facilities across 4 states, creating standardized approaches that eliminated opportunities for systematic harassment to develop undetected. The protocols incorporated real-time documentation techniques, financial oversight measures, coordination prevention strategies, and education about the dangers of capability assessment based on gender stereotypes. 9 months after her documentation at Riverside, Rachel received notification that her case had been cited in federal legislation addressing systematic workplace harassment. The Riverside documentation standards had become legal requirements for harassment investigation procedures in federal employment cases, while her demonstration video had become mandatory training content for understanding the relationship between discrimination and stereotypical assumptions about physical capability, legal requirements, and mandatory training content. Rachel's audio recordings, systematic documentation, and physical demonstration had established courtroom standards that would influence harassment prosecution throughout the federal system, while providing educational evidence that would prevent future intimidation based on gender stereotypes. 1 year after David's arrest, Rachel published a comprehensive harassment prevention guide that became required reading for HR professionals nationwide. Her documentation techniques and demonstration video provided educational tools preventing similar intimidation attempts across multiple industries. 18 months later, the final TitanSec prosecutions concluded with 43 individuals receiving criminal sentences and $12 million in penalties across 17 facilities in 3 states. Rachel's evidence had dismantled an entire network of systematic discrimination. At her 2-year anniversary, Rachel received the National Civil Rights Award for Documentation Excellence. During her acceptance speech, she referenced the pivotal moments. At 8:47 a.m., David said women were playing dress-up in a man's world. At 9:34 a.m., 5 men discovered assumptions about capability can be disproven in 37 seconds. 3 years later, Rachel testified before Congress, leading to the Stone Standards legislation requiring harassment prevention protocols in federally funded facilities. 4 years after Riverside, she established the Stone Institute for Workplace Justice, extending protection across all industries. 5 years later, David Brooks sent a message acknowledging his mistakes and the failure of intimidation based on stereotypical assumptions. Rachel responded with characteristic directness about preventing future harm. The words that had confronted David during his most confident moments became the foundation for workplace protection policies nationwide, ensuring systematic harassment would be met with systematic justice, and that Rachel's 47-minute documentation, followed by 37 seconds of tactical superiority, would protect workers for generations.
You are not alone. Someone wants to hear you. Share your story. Thank you for watching to the end. Please like and subscribe to Stereo.